Yuna pressed her fingers against the cool glass of the observation window and watched the alien ship approach. Her breath fogged the surface as she leaned closer. The vessel looked nothing like human designs. It moved through space like a hunting cat, all smooth curves and dark metal that seemed to drink in the starlight. "They're called the Velkari," Captain Tejo said behind her. His voice was steady, but Yuna had worked with him long enough to hear the tension underneath. "Our scans show they have at least 40 weapons systems active. They could tear us apart in seconds." Yuna turned away from the window. The briefing room of the Times, Horizon's Promised Times, suddenly felt too small, too warm. 6 other crew members sat around the table, all looking at the captain, all waiting. "But they won't," Tejo continued. "They responded to our greeting. They agreed to board our ship. This is first contact, people. Everything we do in the next few hours will shape how humanity and the Velkari interact for generations." Yuna's specialty was xenobiology, the study of alien life. She had spent years preparing for this moment, but all her training felt distant now, like words in a book she had read long ago. Real aliens were coming. Real, living beings from another world. The docking process took 20 minutes. Yuna stood in the airlock bay with the rest of the contact team. She wore her best uniform, the one with the Earth Federation patch on the shoulder. Her hands were sweating inside her gloves. The airlock hissed open. Yuna's first thought was that the briefing pictures had not done them justice. The Velkari were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. They walked on 2 legs like humans. But that was where the similarity ended. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, covered in sleek fur that shifted between deep purple and black, depending on how the light hit it. Their faces were long and angular, like the great cats of Earth, with large eyes that reflected the bay lights in shades of gold and green. What made Yuna catch her breath were the crystalline structures visible beneath their skin. Patches of translucent flesh revealed what looked like bones made of white crystal, glowing faintly from within. The effect was ghostly and hypnotic. The lead Velkari stepped forward. Scars crossed their muzzle and neck. Speaking of battles survived. When they spoke, a translator device on their chest converted the sounds into human standard language. "I am Raska, warrior diplomat of the Velkari realm. We come in peace to meet the humans." Tejo bowed slightly, the way the cultural team had suggested. "I am Captain Tejo of the human colony ship Times, Horizon's Promise *. Welcome aboard." The formal greetings continued. Yuna tried to focus on the words, to catalog every detail the way she had been trained, but her attention kept drifting to the small figure, half hidden behind Raska's legs. A child. A Velkari child. The little one was perhaps 3 feet tall, covered in softer, fluffier fur than the adults. Their crystalline structures were smaller, more delicate, glowing slightly brighter. Large eyes peered around Raska's leg at the humans. Yuna felt something in her chest tighten. She recognized that look. Fear. Curiosity. The universal expression of a child in a strange new place. The Velkari delegation followed Tejo toward the conference room. The cub Yuna found herself thinking of the child as a cub, stayed close to Raska, but those big eyes kept looking around, taking in the human ship with its strange smells and unfamiliar sounds. In Velkari culture, Tejo had explained, bringing their young to important meetings was a sign of trust. It said, "We believe you will not harm what we treasure most." The pressure of that trust sat heavy on Yuna's shoulders. They walked through the corridors of the Times Horizon's Promise *. The ship's engines hummed at a frequency humans barely noticed, but the cub's ears flattened against their head with each pulse. When they passed through a pressure door and it hissed shut behind them, the little Velkari jumped and pressed closer to Raska. Raska placed a large paw on the cub's shoulder. "Pip. Courage." The cub, Pip, straightened slightly but still looked miserable. Yuna found herself slowing down, falling behind the main group. Pip was trembling now, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar environment. The other Velkari adults were focused on the humans, on the diplomatic protocols, on maintaining their proud warrior bearing. No one seemed to notice that Pip was struggling. Maybe it was her training in xenobiology. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was just the simple human response to seeing a frightened child. Regardless of species. Yuna knelt down on the corridor floor. She opened her arms. It was a gesture as old as humanity itself. The universal signal of comfort, of safety, of welcome. Pip's large eyes fixed on her. The cub looked back at the Velkari adults, now several paces ahead, looked at Yuna, hesitated. Then Pip rushed forward into her arms. The cub was warm and surprisingly solid. Soft fur pressed against Yuna's uniform. She could feel Pip shaking, could hear the rapid breathing. Instinct took over. Yuna wrapped her arms around the small body and made soft, soothing sounds. The same kinds of sounds humans had been making to comfort frightened children for thousands of years. Shh, it's okay. You're safe. It's just a ship. Strange, I know, but it won't hurt you. You're very brave, coming all this way. Pip didn't understand the words, but tone carried meaning across species. The trembling began to slow. The rapid breathing evened out. Yuna felt the small body relax against her. She looked up and froze. Every Velkari in the corridor had stopped. They were all staring at her. The delegation, Raska, even Captain Teho, and the human crew had turned to look. The silence was absolute. Yuna's mind raced. Had she done something wrong? Violated some taboo? Touched a Velkari child without permission? She started to pull back, to apologize. But Pip made a small sound of protest and pressed closer. Raska took a step toward her. The warrior's face was unreadable. Alien features not showing emotion in ways Yuna could interpret. She waited for anger, for an incident that would destroy this first contact. Instead, Raska slowly lowered their head. It was a bow. Deep and formal. A gesture of profound respect. The other Velkari followed suit, bowing to Yuna. She had no idea what was happening. Pip pulled back from the embrace, looking up at Yuna with those large eyes. The cub's crystalline structures were glowing, noticeably brighter now. Pip stood straighter, head held higher. The fear was gone, replaced with something that looked almost like pride. Pip returned to Raska's side, walking with confidence that hadn't been there before. Raska placed a paw on the cub's head, then looked at Yuna. You honor us. The translator converted. We did not know humans still carried the ancient gift. Before Yuna could ask what that meant, Raska turned to Teho. This meeting has revealed much. We must return to our ship to consult with our elders. We will contact you soon regarding further discussions. The Velkari delegation departed quickly after that, moving with purpose back toward the airlock. Yuna stood in the corridor, still kneeling, trying to process what had just happened. Teho helped her to her feet. What did you do? I don't know. Yuna said honestly. Pip was scared. So I offered comfort. Well, whatever it was, it made an impression. Teho looked toward the airlock where the Velkari had disappeared. Did you see how that cub changed? Like they'd been recharged somehow. Yuna had seen it. The brighter glow, the straighter posture, the confidence. She had thought it was just a child recovering from fear, but the way the Velkari had reacted, the things Raska had said. Ancient gift, she murmured. What ancient gift? Neither of them had an answer. The Velkari ship departed an hour later. Normal diplomatic channels suggested the next contact would happen in a few days, maybe a week. Both sides would review what happened, consult with their leadership, prepare for formal negotiations. Yuna went to her quarters and started writing her report. A simple act of comfort for a frightened child. That was all it had been. The Velkari must have some cultural significance attached to touching their young, some ritual she had accidentally completed correctly. She was sure someone would explain it all soon. She had no idea that across 3 star systems, The Velkari were already spreading the word. The humans possessed the touch of strengthening. The ancient power thought lost to time. They could share their essence, their courage, their strength, through physical contact. The legends were true. And the humans knew the secret. Harin rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the message queue on her terminal. 43 new requests from Velkari contacts in the past week alone. All of them marked urgent. All of them asking for the same strange thing. Station Kepler 9 orbited a gas giant on the edge of human-controlled space. Harin had taken the diplomatic posting because it was supposed to be quiet, a place to build her career slowly. Handle minor trade disputes. File reports that nobody important would ever read. That was 6 weeks ago, before the Times Horizon's Promise Times made first contact, before everything changed. She opened the first message. A Velkari trade delegation, requesting a meeting before their convoy departed for the outer territories. Standard enough, except for the last line. We humbly request the strength ritual to ensure safe passage. Strength ritual. Those words appeared in almost every message. Harin had sent 3 inquiries to the Velkari embassy, asking for clarification. Each response had been polite but confusing. Talking about ancient practices and the gift humans carry, and sharing of essence. Nothing that made any practical sense. A chime indicated someone at her office door. Harin checked the camera feed and saw 3 Velkari waiting in the corridor. She recognized the lead figure from the trade delegation message. Come in, she said, keying the door open. The Velkari entered with a formality that seemed excessive for a simple trade discussion. All 3 bowed deeply before sitting in the chairs Harin had modified for their larger frames. Thank you for seeing us, the leader said through their translator. I am Kelvar. We depart tomorrow for patrol duties in the frontier sectors. The routes are dangerous. Pirates, spatial anomalies, many risks. 1. Harin nodded, pulling up the standard trade route safety briefings on her screen. I can provide you with the latest navigation data and threat assessments. We've had reports of increased raider activity near the... We have the data. Kelvar interrupted, then seemed to catch themselves. Forgive me. The information is appreciated. But we came to request something more valuable. We hoped you might perform the strength ritual before we depart. There it was again. Harin set down her stylus and looked directly at the Velkari. I've received many requests, but no clear description of what this ritual involves. The 3 Velkari exchanged glances. Kelvar's crystalline structures flickered with what might have been confusion or embarrassment. The sharing of essence, Kelvar said slowly, as if speaking to a child. The touch of strengthening. What the human Yuna demonstrated aboard the Times Horizon's Promise *, when she held young Pip and transferred courage and strength through physical contact. Harin's mind raced back to the first contact reports. She had read them all, of course. There had been a moment where the xenobiologist had comforted a frightened Velkari child. A simple hug, that was it. You mean, an embrace? Harin asked carefully. Kelvar's eyes brightened. Yes, the embrace. We know humans do not share this gift lightly. We would not ask, except the journey is perilous, and our crew is nervous. Even a small transfer of strength would help. Harin sat back in her chair. This was absurd. They thought hugging transferred strength? But Kelvar and the others looked completely serious. Their body language radiated hope and respectful supplication. Refusing might cause a diplomatic incident. Harin thought about all the training she had received about respecting alien cultures, about trying to understand different perspectives. I can try, she said finally. But I should tell you, I'm not trained in any special technique. I might not do it right. Any human touch carries the gift, Kelvar assured her. This is known. Quote, Harin stood and came around her desk. She had hugged plenty of humans in her life. Friends, family, colleagues. But hugging a 7-foot-tall alien warrior felt completely different. Awkward, She extended her arms. Kelvar stepped into the embrace carefully, as if approaching something sacred. Harin wrapped her arms around the Velkari's broad shoulders and held on for what felt like an appropriate amount of time. Kelvar was warm, and the fur was softer than it looked. When they separated, Kelvar's crystalline structures were glowing noticeably brighter. The Velkari looked down at their own hands in wonder, flexing their fingers. Incredible, Kelvar breathed. I feel renewed, stronger, more certain. The other two Velkari were staring in awe. Harin felt like she was going crazy. She hadn't done anything except give an awkward hug. There was no way that had actually transferred strength, or courage, or whatever they thought was happening. But Kelvar's reaction seemed genuine, and the glow was real. She could see it with her own eyes. The three Velkari bowed deeply and departed, talking excitedly among themselves. Harin returned to her desk and immediately sent a message to Captain Teho on the Times Horizon's Promise, *. We have a situation, she wrote. Across 3 star systems, similar scenes were playing out. Jinwoo, a merchant operating near the Velkari border, found himself offered triple payment for standard goods if he would perform a transfer ceremony with the buyer's crew. He had no idea what that meant and politely declined, watching in confusion as the Velkari delegation left looking disappointed. On Station Liberty, Security Officer Dae-jung reported Velkari warriors gathering outside human residential areas. Not threateningly, his report stressed. They were just waiting. When asked what for, they said they hoped to meet humans who might share strength with them. The reports flooded into Earth Federation headquarters. Xenoanthropology teams scrambled to analyze what was happening. Captain Teho called an emergency meeting with every specialist available. Yuna sat in that meeting, feeling dozens of eyes on her. Walk us through it again, said Dr. Choi, the head xenoanthropologist. Every detail of your interaction with the Velkari child. Yuna had already told the story 5 times, but she went through it again. Pip was frightened. She offered comfort. She held the cub until the trembling stopped. That was it. Nothing special. Nothing ritualistic. And you noticed the crystalline structures brightening? Dr. Choi asked. Yes, but I thought that was just, I don't know, emotional regulation? Teho pulled up reports from across human Velkari contact zones. It's not just you. Every human who's embraced a Velkari reports the same glowing effect. And every Velkari who's been embraced reports feeling stronger, more confident, more capable. It's placebo effect, someone suggested. They believe it works, so they feel better. Doesn't matter if it's placebo, another specialist countered. They believe it's real. We're looking at a massive cultural misunderstanding that's spreading through their entire species. How do we handle this? 1. Yuna looked at the star charts, showing Velkari territories. Hundreds of millions of beings, all part of a warrior culture, that now believed humans possessed some ancient power. A power that had never existed. We tell them the truth, she said quietly, before this gets worse. But even as she said it, Yuna wondered if the truth mattered. Something was happening when humans touched Velkari. She had seen it with Pip. Harin had reported it. Every account agreed. The glow was real. The change in behavior was real. Maybe the why didn't matter as much as the what. 3 days later, Harin sent another message. A young Velkari warrior had approached her station's docking bay and waited for 6 hours. When Harin finally went to speak with them, the warrior had spoken in carefully practiced human language. Please, the warrior had said. My squad goes to battle tomorrow. I am afraid, but I cannot show fear to my unit. I heard humans can help. Just once. Just a small embrace for courage. Please. Harin had looked into those large alien eyes and seen something completely familiar. Fear. Vulnerability. The desperate hope that someone might help carry the weight of what tomorrow might bring. She had hugged the warrior. Held tight while the Velkari's breathing steadied, and the crystalline structures blazed with light. When they separated, the warrior had tears in their eyes. "Thank you," they had whispered. "I understand now why the old stories spoke of this with such reverence. To share strength so freely, with no combat bond, no blood oath. This is a gift, beyond measure." The warrior had left. Ha-Rin had sat down on a cargo crate and tried not to cry herself. Her message to Yuna was simple. We can't tell them it's meaningless. Whatever is happening here, it's helping them. And I think we need to understand it before we dismiss it. Yuna read the message in her quarters aboard the Times Horizons Promise *. Outside her window, stars wheeled slowly past. Somewhere out there, the Valkyrie were spreading word of the human gift. The ancient power returned. She thought about Pip's face, transformed from fear to confidence. About Ha-Rin's warrior, finding courage in a simple embrace. About the fundamental human need for connection and comfort. And how maybe that need wasn't uniquely human after all. Her communicator chimed. An official summons. The Valkyrie had formally requested that she come to their homeworld. They wanted to understand the strength ritual. They wanted to learn from the first human, to demonstrate the gift. They wanted answers Yuna didn't have. She accepted the invitation anyway. The shuttle descended through Krelvo's atmosphere, and Yuna watched the Valkyrie homeworld reveal itself below. Cities of dark stone and crystal spread across continents, glowing faintly in the twilight. The architecture was all sharp angles and sweeping curves, beautiful and slightly dangerous looking. Just like the Valkyrie themselves. Yuna's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her knees to keep them still. "Nervous?" asked Sujin, the psychologist who had been assigned to accompany her. The woman's calm presence had been the only thing keeping Yuna from panicking for the entire 3-week journey. "Terrified," Yuna admitted. "What if I say the wrong thing? What if I offend them? What if this whole situation falls apart because I hugged a scared child? Then we deal with it," Sujin said simply. "But I don't think that's going to happen. I've been reviewing all the data we have on Valkyrie culture. They're warriors, yes, but they're also deeply honorable. They invited you here to understand, not to punish." The shuttle landed in what looked like a formal garden. All crystalline sculptures and carefully cultivated plants with dark purple leaves. A delegation of Valkyrie waited at the landing pad. Yuna recognized Raska among them, the warrior diplomat from the first contact. And beside Raska stood Pip, now wearing what looked like formal clothing decorated with small crystal ornaments. When Yuna descended the shuttle ramp, Pip rushed forward. The young Valkyrie stopped just short of her and bowed deeply. "Yuna of humanity," Pip said in surprisingly good human standard language. "Welcome to our home. I have been practicing. I wanted to greet you properly." Yuna felt her eyes water. She knelt down to Pip's level. "You've grown. And your language skills are amazing. I study hard," Pip said proudly. "Because you helped me. You gave me courage. Now, I want to understand how." That was the question, wasn't it? How had a simple hug become something the Valkyrie considered almost sacred? Raska led them through the city to a building that looked ancient, its stones worn smooth by time. "The Hall of Elders," Raska explained. "Our most respected leaders wish to speak with you." Inside, the hall was dimly lit by the glow of crystalline structures embedded in the walls. At the far end, an elderly Valkyrie sat on a simple stone seat. Their fur was gray with age, their movements slow but deliberate. The crystalline structures visible through their skin glowed with a steady, pale light. "Elder Vek," Raska announced, bowing. "I present Yuna of humanity." Yuna bowed as well, trying to match Raska's level of respect. Elder Vek studied her with eyes that had seen more years than Yuna could guess. When the elder spoke, their voice was soft, but clear, translated by the device they wore. "So, the human who remembered what we forgot." Yuna blinked in confusion. "Elder, I'm not sure I understand." "Sit, child. Let me tell you a story." Elder Vec gestured to cushions arranged on the floor. Yuna and Sujin sat. Pip settled next to Raska, listening intently even though the cub had probably heard this before. Long ago, Elder Vec began. Before we became the warrior people you see today, the Velkari lived in family groups. Packs, you might call them. We survived through cooperation, through deep bonds, through connection. The elder paused, their crystalline structures flickering. We touched each other freely, parent and child, warrior and warrior, elder and youth. Through touch, we shared stress, shared comfort, shared strength of spirit. Yuna leaned forward, fascinated. But we changed. Elder Vec continued. We faced threats from other species, from harsh environments, from our own expansion. We decided that to survive, we must be hard, strong, unyielding. Physical touch became seen as weakness. A warrior should stand alone, should need no comfort, should face all challenges with isolated courage. The elder's voice grew sad. We forgot the old warmth. We abandoned the touching, the sharing, the connection. We told ourselves it made us stronger. And in some ways, perhaps it did. We became formidable warriors, conquered challenges, built an empire. But, Sujin prompted gently, but we became sick in our spirits, Elder Vec said. Anxiety that warriors could not speak of. Depression that had no name in our language anymore. We told ourselves it was the price of strength. That suffering alone was noble. To SM, Pip made a small sound. Raska's paw settled on the cub's shoulder, and Yuna noticed how Pip leaned into the touch unconsciously. Then you came. Elder Vec looked at Yuna, and without knowing our history, without understanding what you were doing, you gave Pip the old warmth. Physical comfort freely offered, connection without judgment. And Pip responded the way our bodies were designed to respond, before we trained ourselves to suppress it. The glowing, Yuna said suddenly. The crystalline structures getting brighter. A biological response, Sujin added, her eyes bright with realization. To stress reduction. To social bonding. Elder Vec's head dipped in agreement. Yes. When we touch each other with intention, with care, with comfort, our bodies release the tensions we carry. The crystals grow brighter because we grow lighter. Not in mystical strength transferred, but in burden shared. Yuna sat back, processing this. So, when I hugged Pip, you did not give strength, Elder Vec said. You provided comfort, and in that comfort, Pip found the strength that was already within. This is what we forgot. This is what you reminded us was possible. There was silence in the hall. Outside, Yuna could hear the sounds of the Velkari city, the movement of millions of beings who had spent generations believing they must be isolated to be strong. Elder, Yuna said carefully, I need to be honest with you. Humans didn't do this on purpose. We don't have some ancient power. We're social creatures. We touch each other when we're upset. We hug our friends and family. It's completely normal for us. There's nothing special about it. Is it not special to freely give comfort to a stranger? Elder Vec asked. To see a frightened child of another species and offer warmth without hesitation? You say this is normal for humans. Perhaps that is what makes it powerful. Sujin pulled out her tablet. Elder Vec, if I may, I've been studying the physiological responses we've documented when humans embrace Velkari. Your people experience measurable decreases in stress hormones, increased social bonding, chemical responses, improved emotional regulation. These are the same things humans experience when we hug each other. You are saying we are similar, Raska said. In this way, yes. Both species are deeply social. Both benefit from physical touch and connection. Humans just never stopped doing it openly. Elder Vec was quiet for a long moment. And if we told our people this, that there is no mystical transfer, just simple comfort, would they believe us? Yuna asked. Would it change how they feel? After an embrace? No. Pip spoke up suddenly. All eyes turned to the young Valkyrie. I remember what it felt like when Yuna held me. Even knowing it was just comfort, it helped. The fear was still real. The relief was still real. Understanding why doesn't make it less meaningful. Smart kid, Yuna thought. Elder Vec looked at Yuna with an expression she was beginning to read as respect. So, the question becomes, how do we proceed? We cannot undo what has been learned. Hundreds of thousands of Valkyrie now know that humans offer the old warmth. Many have experienced it. They feel better, function better, live better for it. And humans seem willing to help, Sujin added. I've read the reports. Most humans who've been asked to embrace Valkyrie have done so, even when confused about why. It's instinctive for us to offer comfort when asked. But it should not be one-sided, Raska said firmly. If this is about connection, about sharing burden, then Valkyrie must learn to offer this to each other again as well. Not just receive from humans. Yuna saw the challenge in that statement. Generations of cultural conditioning that said touch was weakness would not be undone easily. May I suggest something? She asked. Elder Vec gestured for her to continue. Don't try to change everything at once. Start small. Start with the young, like Pip, who are already adapting. Let them grow up, knowing that connection and strength aren't opposites. Let them teach the next generation. And in the meantime? Elder Vec asked. In the meantime, yes, humans can help. We can offer comfort and connection. But we should do it as friends, as allies, as partners. Not as mystical strength givers, but as fellow travelers who understand that everyone needs support sometimes. Elder Vec stood slowly, joints creaking with age. The ancient Valkyrie walked toward Yuna, each step deliberate. Yuna rose to meet them. I am old, Elder Vec said softly. I became a warrior in the time when touch was fully forbidden. I have not felt the old warmth since I was younger than Pip is now. I have fought battles, led armies, made decisions that affected billions. And I have been so very alone in it all. The elder's eyes met Yuna's, and she saw something in them that transcended species. Loneliness. Exhaustion. The weight of a lifetime, carried without support. Will you share the old warmth with me? Elder Vec asked. Not as ritual. Not as power transfer. Just as one living being to another who understands that strength and vulnerability are not enemies. Yuna opened her arms. Elder Vec stepped into the embrace. Who had stood alone for so many years, let themselves be held. Yuna felt the elder's breathing hitch. Felt the tension in the old body. Slowly release. Elder Vec's crystalline structures blazed with light, brighter than Yuna had ever seen. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at once. When they stepped apart, tears were running down Elder Vec's furred face. I had forgotten, the elder whispered. Raska made a sound, somewhere between grief and hope. Pip was openly crying. Even Sujin had tears in her eyes. Elder Vec wiped their face and straightened, returning to their formal bearing. But something had changed. There was lightness there that hadn't been before. We will tell our people the truth, Elder Vec declared. Not that humans have mystical powers, but that they have remembered what we forgot. That comfort is not weakness. That connection is its own form of strength. And we will learn from them, even as we relearn what we once knew. The elder looked at Yuna with profound gratitude. You have given us back the old warmth. That is gift. Enough. Mikyung looked at the empty storefront and saw opportunity. The location was perfect. Right on the main concourse of Station Harmony, where human and Valkyrie traffic intersected daily. Large windows, good lighting, enough space for what she had in mind. Her business partner thought she was crazy. "You want to open a hugging center," Hyun-sik said flatly. He was a military advisor, practical and cautious. "A business where people pay to be hugged, not just people, Valkyrie." Mi-kyung pulled up her projection models on her tablet. "Look at the demand. Every human station near Valkyrie space is flooded with requests. Diplomats are overwhelmed. Random humans are being approached in corridors. There's a need here, and nobody's organizing it properly. It feels wrong. Commercializing something that should be freely given." "It would be freely given," Mi-kyung insisted. "I'm not charging the Valkyrie anything. But I need to pay human staff, rent the space, create a safe and comfortable environment. The income would come from the human side, from my people's government grants for cultural integration programs." Hyun-sik was quiet, studying the numbers. Finally, he nodded. "Show me the plan." 2 months later, the Harmony Comfort Center opened its doors. The space was designed with both species in mind. Soft lighting that wouldn't hurt Valkyrie eyes. Quiet rooms with sound dampening for private sessions. Comfortable seating sized for both humans and the taller Valkyrie. Mi-kyung had hired carefully. Humans who were patient, empathetic, trained in cross-species communication. She brought in Jae-min, a therapist who specialized in trauma support, to develop protocols. "Consent is everything," Jae-min explained to the staff during training. "Just because a Valkyrie asks for an embrace doesn't mean you have to give it. Check in with yourself, make sure you're comfortable, and teach them to ask properly, to respect boundaries." "How do we know when a Valkyrie actually wants comfort versus just going through motions?" one staff member asked. Jae-min pulled up images of Valkyrie body language. "Watch the ears. If they're forward and relaxed, they're genuinely seeking connection. If they're back and tense, they might be forcing themselves. Watch the crystalline structures. Dim or flickering means high stress. And most importantly, talk to them. Ask questions. Treat each individual as unique." The first day, 12 Valkyrie visited. By the end of the first week, they had a waiting list. Mi-kyung watched through the observation window as a young Valkyrie warrior sat with one of her staff members, a gentle human woman named Bo-ra. They were talking quietly, the Valkyrie's translator converting the words. "I deploy tomorrow," the warrior said. "My first real assignment. I'm scared, but I can't tell my squad. They're all veterans. They'll think I'm weak." Bo-ra nodded with understanding. "Fear before your first deployment is normal. It means you understand the stakes. That's wisdom, not weakness. My parent told me to be strong. To stand alone. You can be strong and still ask for support. Those things aren't opposites." The warrior was quiet for a moment, then asked, "May I receive comfort?" "Of course." Bo-ra stood and opened her arms. The Valkyrie warrior stepped into the embrace, and Mi-kyung saw the tension drain from the large body. The crystalline structures began to glow brighter. When they separated, the warrior's shoulders were straighter. "Thank you," the warrior said softly. "I feel ready now." Mi-kyung smiled. This was working. This was actually working. Within 6 months, there were comfort centers on 15 human stations. Jaemin's protocols became standard training for anyone working in human Valkyrie interaction zones. Universities started offering courses in cross-species emotional support. But more interesting was what was happening on the Valkyrie side. Pip, now a teenager in Valkyrie terms, started a program in the Valkyrie education system. Young Valkyrie, learning that physical affection between family members was healthy, not weak. Children were encouraged to hug their parents, their siblings, their friends. The older generation watched with mixed feelings. Some embraced the change. Others worried that the warrior culture was being corrupted. The crisis came from an unexpected direction. Commander Vashk led a Valkyrie war fleet of 30 ships. Veteran warriors all, proud of their traditional ways. When human advisors offered to establish a comfort center on the fleet's home station, Vashk refused. My warriors do not need human coddling, Vashk declared. We will face our duties as Velkari have always faced them. Alone. Strong. Unyielding. Hyun-sik brought the news to Mi Kyung with concern. This could be a problem. If Vashk's fleet performs well without human contact, it might prove we're not necessary. That all of this has been weakness. Or it might prove the opposite, Mi Kyung said quietly. 3 weeks later, Vashk's fleet engaged raiders in the frontier territories. It should have been a straightforward operation. The Velkari had superior numbers and firepower. Instead, it was a disaster. Stressed commanders made poor tactical decisions. Crews that couldn't acknowledge fear fought sloppily, took unnecessary risks. Casualties were 3 times higher than expected. 2 ships suffered serious damage. The raiders escaped. The fleet returned to station in shame. And Vashk, proud Commander Vashk, sent a message to the nearest comfort center. We request assistance. Mi Kyung went herself, bringing Jae-min and their most experienced staff. The fleet's crew gathered in the station's main hall. Hundreds of Velkari warriors trying to look stoic, while their crystalline structures flickered with barely suppressed stress. Vashk stood before them, and for the first time, the commander's voice shook. I led you poorly. I told you that strength meant standing alone. I was wrong. Vashk looked at the humans. I do not ask you to fix our weakness. I ask you to help us acknowledge what we have denied. That even warriors carry burdens. That even the strong need support. What happened next took hours. One by one, the crew members approached the humans. Some asked for embraces. Some just wanted to talk. Some broke down crying, releasing stress they had carried for years. Mi Kyung held warrior after warrior, felt their tension release, watched their crystalline structures brighten. Jae-min sat with a group of young crew members who admitted they had been too afraid to function properly in combat. Fear is information, Jae-min explained gently. It tells you where the danger is. Acknowledging it doesn't make you weak. Ignoring it and making mistakes, that's what causes problems. One crew member, an engineer, spoke quietly to Bo-ra. I watched my partner die in the battle. I couldn't save them. And I couldn't tell anyone. Because grief is seen as inappropriate. Warriors should move on. Bo-ra took the engineer's hands. Grief means you loved someone. That's not inappropriate. That's beautiful, and painful, and deeply important. The engineer's crystalline structures dimmed as tears fell. May I? Of course. By the time the session ended, the entire fleet felt different. Lighter. More cohesive. Vashk found Mi Kyung before they left. I see it now, the commander said. What Elder Vec tried to teach us. Strength and vulnerability are not enemies. They work together. My crew fought poorly not because they were weak, but because they could not admit to normal fear, could not support each other, could not function as a true unit because we were all pretending to be isolated warriors. What will you do now? Mi Kyung asked. Change. Slowly, but truly. We will establish support systems in our fleet. We will train our warriors to acknowledge stress and seek help. We will remember the old warmth. Vashk paused, then asked, May I receive comfort? Not as ritual, not as superstition, but as one being who has learned they do not have to carry everything alone. Mi Kyung smiled and opened her arms. The news of Vashk's fleet spread through Velkari space like fire. If veteran warriors could embrace the old warmth and become stronger for it, then anyone could. Velkari parents started hugging their children openly. Warriors developed squad-based support systems. Mental health centers opened across Velkari worlds, modeled on human designs, but adapted for Velkari needs. The younger generation, raised with both the warrior tradition and the rediscovered warmth, began to integrate them. Pip became a symbol of this, a young Velkari who could be fierce and affectionate, strong and vulnerable, traditional and progressive all at once. Jae-min published research showing measurable improvements in Velkari mental health, combat effectiveness, social cohesion, and general well-being. The data was clear. Connection made them stronger, not weaker. Mi-kyung stood in her original comfort center one evening, watching the sunset through the station's windows. The waiting room was full, but it was different now. Half the beings waiting were Velkari seeking human contact. The other half were Velkari offering to share the old warmth with other Velkari. Hyunsik joined her, looking out at the mixed crowd. Not just needed, natural. Mi-kyung smiled. We didn't create something new. We just helped them remember what they already had. What all social species have. Really, the need to not be alone. A young Velkari cub was playing in the corner with a human child, both laughing. When the cub stumbled, the human child immediately offered a hug. The cub accepted without hesitation, then returned to playing. So simple, so normal, so absolutely revolutionary. For a species that had spent generations denying themselves this basic comfort. The humans gave us back the old warmth, Pip had said in a recent interview. But we gave them something too. We showed them that their everyday kindness, the simple comfort they offer so freely, is powerful enough to change entire civilizations. They didn't even know how special they were until they saw what it meant to us. Mi-kyung thought about that, about how humans had stumbled into being the species that reminded the Velkari to hug each other. How such a small thing had reshaped two civilizations. Sometimes, she thought, the most powerful things were the simplest. A frightened child. An offered embrace. A moment of genuine connection. Across species lines, everything else had grown from that. 5 years had changed everything. Yunbi couldn't remember a time before the Velkari. She had been 3 years old when first contact happened, too young to remember the fear and uncertainty. Now, at 8, she went to school with Velkari cubs, played with them at recess, shared snacks that were carefully formulated to be safe for both species. Her best friend was a Velkari named Kes, who was the same age in Velkari terms. They sat together in class, worked on projects together, got in trouble together for talking too much. "Do you want to come to my dwelling after school?" Kes asked, their translator device rendering the words in child-friendly tones. "My parents said I could have a friend over. I have to ask my mom," Yunbi said. But probably yes. This was normal. This was just how life was. Human and Velkari children growing up side by side, learning each other's languages, sharing each other's games. The younger generation saw nothing strange about it. Across the station, Yuna sat in a diplomatic office that had become her second home over the past 5 years. The title on her door read, Human Ambassador to Velkari Relations and Mother of Warmth. She still felt awkward about that second title. But the Velkari had insisted. "We honor what you gave us," Elder Vec had said. Not just comfort to one cub, but the reminder that comfort itself is a gift worth giving. Raska entered the office, moving with the confident grace of a seasoned warrior. Pip followed close behind, now fully grown and wearing the uniform of a Velkari cultural liaison officer. "Ambassador," Raska greeted with a slight bow. "We have a situation." Yuna gestured for them to sit. "Tell me." "The Kreeth have attacked human and Velkari colonies in the border territories," Pip said, pulling up tactical displays. 14 ships, heavily armed. They've hit 3 settlements already. The Kreeth were a hostile species, aggressive and territorial. They had ignored all diplomatic overtures from both humans and Velkari. Now they were attacking. "Casualties?" Yuna asked, her stomach sinking. 37 humans, 52 Velkari so far. The settlements were lightly defended. Raska's crystalline structures flickered with anger. "We're assembling a response fleet. Combined human and Velkari forces. Combined forces." That was new. 5 years ago, the Velkari military would have acted independently. Now, cooperation was standard. "I'm not a military tactician," Yuna said. "Why are you telling me this?" Pip and Raska exchanged glances. "Because the fleet wants you there," Pip explained. Not to fight, but to help. Before we go, Yuna understood. They wanted the old warmth, comfort, and connection before facing danger. How many ships in the fleet? She asked. 20 human vessels, 30 Velkari, Raska said. Crews totaling about 4,000 beings. We deploy in 3 days. Yuna did quick mental math. She couldn't possibly embrace 4,000 individuals. But maybe she didn't need to. Let me make some calls, she said. 2 days later, the combined fleet gathered at Station Unity. Yuna arrived with a team of 50 humans, all trained in the protocols Jae-min had developed. Comfort providers, counselors, support specialists. But they wouldn't be the only ones offering the old warmth. Velkari crew members had volunteered to help. Warriors who had learned to embrace their own people, to offer comfort as freely as humans did. The integration wasn't perfect yet, but it was happening. The station's main hangar had been converted into a gathering space. Crews from both species mingled, talking quietly. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew what they were facing. Captain Teho, now an admiral in charge of the human portion of the fleet, found Yuna. He looked older, with gray in his hair, but his eyes were still sharp. This is unprecedented, he said. A combined operation of this scale. 5 years ago, we weren't even sure how to talk to each other. Now, we're fighting side by side. Are you worried? Yuna asked. Terrified, Teho admitted, but also confident. This crew, this combined force, they trust each other in ways that would have been impossible before, because they've learned to be vulnerable with each other, to admit fear and still function. Across the hangar, Unbi's mother, a shuttle pilot named G1, was talking with her Velkari co-pilot. They had flown together for 2 years, had developed the kind of seamless coordination that came from deep trust. Nervous? The Velkari asked. Very, G1 admitted. I keep thinking about Unbi. What happens to her if I don't come back? The Velkari placed a large paw on her shoulder. Then I will make sure she knows her parent was brave. And I will visit her. Bring her stories of you. She will not be alone. Smarties. Well, G1 felt tears sting her eyes. She turned and hugged her co-pilot, who returned the embrace without hesitation. This was normal now. Natural. The way it should be. Across the hangar, similar scenes played out. Humans and Velkari offering each other comfort before the battle. Some embraced. Some held hands. Some just sat together in quiet companionship. Yuna moved through the crowd, offering embraces to those who asked. But she noticed she wasn't needed as much as she expected. The crews were supporting each other, human and Velkari together. Pip found her in the crowd. The young Velkari looked nervous, their crystalline structures flickering rapidly. First real combat assignment? Yuna guessed. Yes. I'm assigned to communications on Commander Vashk's ship. I'm scared. Yuna. What if I fail? What if I can't do my job when it matters? Yuna remembered the frightened cub from 5 years ago. Remembered how Pip had rushed into her arms, seeking comfort. Now Pip stood tall, trained, capable, but still vulnerable enough to admit fear. You're going to do fine, Yuna said. Not because you're not afraid, but because you're smart enough to acknowledge the fear and prepare anyway. And you won't be alone. Your crew is there. Your human squad mates are there. Can I? Pip asked, gesturing hesitantly. Yuna opened her arms, and Pip stepped into the embrace. It was different now. Pip was taller, broader, fully grown. But the essence was the same. Connection. Support. The reminder that none of them had to face challenges alone. When they separated, Pip's crystalline structures were blazing bright. Thank you, Pip said softly. For everything. 5 years ago, you gave a scared cub comfort. You changed my life. Changed all our lives. You give me too much credit, Yuna said. You were brave enough to accept help. That's the hard part. The fleet deployed 6 hours later. 20 human ships and 30 Velkari vessels moving in coordinated formation. On every bridge, mixed crews worked side by side. In every ready room, warriors from both species prepared together. Before they jumped to the battle zone, something unexpected happened. On Commander Vashk's ship, the Velkari commander stood before the assembled crew. Humans and Velkari together, all watching. "Warriors," Vashk said. "We go to defend our people, our homes, our future. This will be dangerous. Some of us may not return. I will not lie to you about that." The crew was silent, attentive. 5 years ago, I would have told you to face this alone. To be strong in isolation. I was wrong. Vashk looked around the room, meeting eyes both human and Velkari. "We are stronger together. Stronger when we acknowledge fear and support each other through it. Stronger when we remember the old warmth." End quote. Fiver Wunham Worley. On Major. End quote. Vashk turned to their second in command, a human named Insu. "I am afraid. I admit this freely, and I ask for the comfort of my crew, my brothers and sisters in arms, before we face what comes." Insu stepped forward and embraced the Velkari commander. Then others joined. One by one, crew members came forward, a mass of humans and Velkari, all connecting, all sharing the burden of fear and the strength of unity. It happened on other ships too. Crews gathering before battle, not to deny their fear but to acknowledge it and face it together. The battle itself was brutal. The Kreeth fought viciously, their ships aggressive and deadly. But the combined human-Velkari fleet fought with coordination that surprised even themselves. When Velkari ships took damage, human vessels moved to cover them. When human crews were stressed, Velkari warriors offered calm support over communications. They moved as one force, not two separate species trying to cooperate. Jiwan's shuttle was hit during an evacuation run. The ship spun out of control. Shields, failing. Her Velkari co-pilot grabbed the secondary controls, and together they stabilized the craft long enough to complete the rescue. "We're going to make it," the Velkari said firmly. Together, they did. Pip coordinated communications under fire, routing messages between human and Velkari ships with speed and accuracy that impressed even the veteran officers. When the stress became overwhelming, when Pip's hands started shaking too badly to work the controls, a human squad mate placed a hand on Pip's shoulder. "Breathe," the human said. "You've got this." Pip took a breath, felt the comfort of connection, and kept working. The battle lasted 7 hours. When it ended, the Kreeth had retreated, their fleet broken. The colonies were saved. Casualties were surprisingly light. Coordination between crews had prevented the kind of mistakes that cost lives. Support systems meant stressed personnel could function effectively instead of freezing or making errors. The fleet returned to Station Unity as heroes. But the celebration was muted. They had lost people. 12 humans, 17 Velkari, who wouldn't be coming home. The memorial service was held in the same hangar where they had gathered before deployment. Humans and Velkari stood together, mourning together. Tears fell on both sides. Teho spoke at the service, his voice heavy with grief and pride. Not just colonies, not just territory, but the idea that different species can become family. That strength comes from connection, not isolation. Yuna watched Unbi in the crowd, standing next to Kes. The two children held hands, human and Velkari, supporting each other through the sad ceremony. This was the future. This was what 5 years had built. Not just diplomatic relations or trade agreements, but genuine integration. Genuine family. Later, Yuna found Elder Vek in a quiet observation room. The ancient Velkari was looking out at the stars, their expression thoughtful. "We did it," Elder Vek said softly. "We fought together, truly together. Not as separate forces allied by convenience, but as one people with two forms. It's amazing," Yuna agreed. 5 years ago, I never imagined this. You know what the most incredible part is? Elder Vec turned to her. You humans gave us back the old warmth, but in doing so, you also learned something. You showed us that your everyday kindness, your natural empathy, your willingness to offer comfort, these things you take for granted, are powerful enough to reshape civilizations. Yuna thought about that. About how humans had always hugged, always sought comfort, always connected. They had never thought of it as special. Maybe that's the real lesson, she said. That the simple things we do for each other, human to human, Velkari to Velkari, or across species, those are what really matter. Not the big dramatic gestures, but the everyday choice to reach out, to comfort, to connect. Elder Vec's crystalline structures glowed softly. You asked once if you could share the old warmth with me. May I return that gift now? May I offer you comfort, as one friend to another? Yuna smiled and opened her arms. Elder Vec embraced her gently, and they stood together in companionable silence, watching the stars. Two civilizations, brought together by a frightened cub and a xenobiologist who knew how to hug. Who could have predicted it? Across the station, life continued. Yunbi and Kes made plans for a sleepover, arguing about which movies to watch. Ji-won reunited with her daughter, holding her tight while her Velkari co-pilot looked on with gentle satisfaction. Pip filed reports and made plans to visit home, to tell their parent Raska about the battle, about being scared and being brave at the same time. And in the darkness of space, in the quiet moments between crises, humans and Velkari continued to do what they did best now. They reached out. They connected. They shared the warmth. Because strength, they had learned, was not something you held alone. The galaxy was large and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. And two species who had learned to hug each other were ready to face whatever came next. Together,